you have $500 to spend, the Galaxy S24 FE is probably the most well-rounded phone you can buy. With a good AMOLED screen that is now even larger, the same processor as the Galaxy S24, along with a solid set of specs that, just makes it a very complete phone. I bought it myself on Samsung store for $649, but I ended up trading the S23 FE, so it ended up costing only $250. But after 2 months of its launch, you can actually get it for around $500, which I do think it's a competitive price. Right out of the box, you won't notice many differences, honestly, because it's quite identical to the previous model, except for its size, which, has increased a little bit. You can also see that its screen has now smaller bezels, but the most annoying change for me is that they made it much more rectangular along with the edges, unlike what we had with the Galaxy S23 FE. This is a trend that I'm seeing with more and more phones that are just trying to look like the iPhone, but the only advantage I see is that you can lay it flat on a table without a stand. Anyway, you will probably end up using it with a case because the design of its rear cameras, which always make it wobble on a flat surface. What was a surprise for me is that they really increased the size of this phone, which I do think it was a bad decision. Around this price point, you don't really find compact phones, and the Galaxy S23 FE was an exception. It's kinda true that the Galaxy A35 and even the A55 also increased its size, so I think that Samsung is just, responding to trends. And another significant change is the new processor. The Exynos 2400E is very similar to the one we have in the S24, but with the slight underclock on one core. And let me tell you that in daily use, it's basically a flagship level performance. This processor is 2 generations ahead of the one that we had in the S23 FE, and you can see that difference in synthetic benchmarks. It also improves the user experience when opening and navigating through apps, and in my speed test, it performs the same as the S24 Ultra and shows substantial improvements over the S23 FE. And when you compare to other phones in the same price range, you can see how it holds its own. We all have some preconceived notions about the Samsung processors, but I can tell you that this one works really well. And yes, it has a slightly larger battery, but its screen size balanced that out, although its charging speed remains a mediocre 25 watts. We all know that the S24 FE is a trimmed down version of the S24, so it's up to you to decide if the compromises that you get with this are justified. It still uses a virtual proximity sensor, which can cause some issues. Its fingerprint reader is still optical, so it's a little bit slower. The base model storage speed remains at UFS 3.1. It is still somewhat, like a heavy phone, and it has a chunky screen bezels. But perhaps the biggest compromises lies in the cameras. Not in the main sensor, which is practically the same and still deliver excellent results, which is still a big win. But the ultra wide is more like a mid-range phones lacking autofocus or macro capabilities. The same can be said for the 8 megapixel telephoto lens and the selfie camera, which also lacks autofocus. But something to consider is that this phone usually costs $200 less than the S24 Plus, and you can actually get it right now for under $500. But the best part of this phone is that it shares the pros and cons of its older siblings, when compared to other phones. For example, both models have a 6.7-inch screen and they are IP68 water and dust resistant. They both have a powerful processor for any task, and they share the same main rear camera sensor, now capable of recording 4K at 120 frames per second for awesome slow motion shots. Plus, they both receive 7 years of software updates. All of this is great, but if you're looking for the best camera, don't get either of these. A better option will be the last year Pixel 8. If you want faster charging, the Realme GT6 or the new 7 Pro is a better choice. And if you want the best performance, just go for a gaming phone. The main issue with this phone at launch was its price for $649, especially when you have the S24 that it's much better in a lot of aspects for $700, but right now for less than $500, I do think that it's a great deal. And yes, even with an Exynos processor. But anyway, that's just my opinion, and if you have a different one or any questions, you can leave it in the comments. I'll see you in the next one. Ciao, ciao!